What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Big John and G from Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming, and my friends, it is true, I am back! I'm back on this nice, quiet Monday. And I've been thinking about the past. I've been thinking about where things were, where things are. What I mean in that is about gaming. Because, I started gaming a long time ago. I started gaming like 41 years ago. So I've seen a lot of changes. And the one thing I've never really understood, outside of the need of filling one's pocket, lining one's wallet, I've never understood why there are new editions. Like I said, outside of my company wants to make more money, so we're going to put out a new edition of a game. Outside of that, I don't understand the whole concept. And the reason for that is because when RPGing started, it was different than any other game. I know, you're thinking, John, we know that. Think about it, though. Up until Dungeons & Dragons, I never heard of house rules. I never went to somebody's house and they played Monopoly different. I never went over to somebody's house and they played Stratego or Risk differently. You played the way the rules were. That's the way it was. But with Dungeons & Dragons, it was different. Because I'll tell you, during the 80s, I never sat at a D&D table that was played the same way between different dungeon masters. The core is there. You recognize the game. You know you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. But it was different because of house rules. Things didn't work for you. Things you and your friends didn't like. You altered it. It was as simple as that. So when 2nd edition came out, I was a little confused. Now, at the time, I wasn't following the trade. So at the time, I had no idea what was happening with Gary Gygax and how the company was being taken over, and therefore brought into a new direction. Being run by someone who was a business-minded person more than a creator, and definitely not a gamer. But I was unaware of all that while it was happening at the time. All I knew is they changed D&D, and they made it worse. They took things out that shouldn't have been taken out. They added things in that I didn't understand why they added in. But it wasn't so horrible. I bought up everything. I went through my friendly local gaming store, the Complete Strategist, down on 33rd Street, and I picked up everything new for 2nd edition. And what I didn't like, I house ruled. What I didn't like, I kept the same as 1st edition. Then it happened again and again and again. Now, when I was in the 80s gaming, one thing I do have to admit right up front, and this does kind of tie in with the whole aspect of redesigning a game. One thing I didn't understand when I started gaming back in the 80s, I was the poster boy for TSR. Let me tell you that. If TSR came out with an RPG, I was there at the store buying it. And by that weekend, if not usually that day, I had it out and me and my friends were gaming. I remember, I think the first game outside of TSR back in the 80s, or outside of Dungeons & Dragons, concerning TSR, back in the 80s that I remember grabbing onto was Boot Hill. Now, I grew up in the tail end of the reruns of the Lone Ranger. When I was a kid in the early 70s growing up, you still had a lot of the old Western movies, the old Duster films that were being replayed on television. So I grew up with a healthy amount of respect for the genre of the Wild West. So when I saw that there was a game like D&D by the creators of D&D, but it took place in the Wild West, man, me and my friends were all over that. I had a bounty hunter who was Native American, Irish mix, who was I can't remember his name. He was the longest running character I had. I think he lasted a whole summer. And that's because, we found out very quickly that Dungeons and Dragons is such an easy game because of clerical spells and healing potions and everything. And then you threw us right in the middle of the Wild West where, you get shot in the arm, you're probably losing your arm. That was a bit of a time-wise culture shock to us. But we loved that game. Then Gangbusters I think was the next game after that I got. The Roaring Twenties, Gangsters, Chicago. Oh, that was great. In fact, I remember, and I still laugh about this, and it wasn't even the first game we played. It might have been the second or third campaign that we were playing in Gangbusters. We all, as always, we all picked criminals to play. We all wanted to be gangsters, all except my friend Anthony. Anthony insisted on being an Irish beat cop. So we thought maybe, okay, you can be an Irish beat cop that's on the take. No. Straight-laced, good guy. White hat all the way. So the very first adventure, he catches the rest of the group coming out of a robbery. He draws his gun, tells everyone to freeze. I remember as the DM, I looked at him, I was like, Anthony, are you sure this is the route you want to take? Oh yeah, I gotta bust you guys. Now, I don't remember the exact rolls for the gunfire, but I swear it would lasted one round and Anthony was dead. That was another great game at TSR. You want to talk about grognarding in the 80s. I think after that it was Gamma World or Star Frontiers. I got one or the other after that, and then the other one. So I got Star Frontiers, then Gamma World, the Gamma World, then Star Frontiers. And Star Frontiers was alright. I liked Star Frontiers. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. Gamma World, my goodness, we couldn't stop playing Gamma World for a while. That probably became our number one TSR game after Dungeons and Dragons until TSR came out with the Marvel system, the Marvel role-playing game with their phase rep, fighting, agility, strength, intelligence, reason, intuition, and psyche were their ability scores. So we all just called it the phase rep. But until that came out, Gamma World, the first couple of the first couple of volumes of the first edition of it, with that washed out cover, it didn't really have a lot of color. It was it's like sepia, that's what I'm trying to say. Sepia, kind of washed out, with like the buildings in the background and these guys in radiation gear and equipment, and they were looking and pointing, and we loved that game. Not just because of the way we got to create mutants, which really, now that I think about it in hindsight, was kind of similar to the way, a decent MMO has character creation, the picking and the choosing. We had that kind of aspect with the Gamma World. We very rarely rolled for our mutations. We did that the first few times, first few campaigns, and after that we were just designing. We were completely designing our mutants, much like the way one designs a character on an MMORPG, What bothered me about the TSR games, and this is getting back to the whole aspect of of house ruling, is the fact that I was a little disturbed, even as a kid, that the same company that published Dungeons and Dragons, and in their Dungeon Master's Guide, in the appendix section, even had a conversion for Boot Hill and Gamma World characters into Dungeons and Dragons, or vice versa. I was always upset that they didn't use the same rules, and I never understood that, which I think is one reason why when third edition and 3.5 came out, I really loved that so much, because I thought that they finally understood that you needed to bring this all together. It's all being done under one house, all under one roof, and it's all similar systems, and you even have a conversion system in one of the books for the others. Well, why not just make all the rules the same? And I think that's one of the things that really got me about 3.5 so much, why I enjoyed it so much. But, going back to the 80s stuff, I'm just talking about the TSR stuff there was fantastic and should have been under the same rules. We could have house ruled it a little bit more than we did back then, but we didn't do a lot of crossovers. Even though it was right there in the appendix of the Dungeon Master's Guide, you could cross over Boot Hill and Gamma World. We didn't do that, and that's okay, because I never really had a campaign idea that needed to do that. It wasn't until I was in high school and I was running the Mount St. Michael Academy Dungeons and Dragons Club that I first encountered other players that crossed game systems over. It was one of the players that I had in the group, Russell Spumani. Wow, I still remember his name from high school after all these years. He had a character from his own group's campaign that he brought over to our school campaign, and he had a black pearl that could turn into anything he wanted it to, and he would turn it into high-grade military weapons. He would turn it into kit from Knight Rider and stuff. And no, it didn't fly very far with me. In fact, you want to hear something? One of the sessions we had, I think we were playing through Queen of the Demon Web Pits, and Russell tells me, he pulls out his sword, and okay, fine, you draw your sword. But he's like, no, John, you don't get it. My sword slices through atoms. It slices through atoms. The molecules itself, the smallest particle of beings, subatoms, it slices through. I'm like, really? Where'd you get that? Oh, from my home campaign, blah, 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 whatever story it was he told me at the time. I was like, yeah, I don't really approve that in my campaign. And he argued with me. He had the nerve to argue with his DM. Now, it's one thing to have a different opinion and bring it up, but when you want to get into a hardcore argument that goes on and on and on with your DM, that's not right. That's not right. So I finally relented. I said, okay, fine. You have a sword that slices through atoms and subatomic particles. Beautiful. You sure you want to draw it? Using my high school logic at the time, I said, you sure you want to draw it? And he said, yeah. I said, fine, you all blow up, atomic explosion. You're all dead. Make new characters. He was so angry at me. Well, you got to be careful, because house rules are for the house. You got to be careful when you're taking things that have a house rule, like a character, into another person's campaign. But again, because of the house ruling, we never needed to bring this all back forward, back to the beginning. We never really needed new systems in games. We didn't need a new edition, because we were playing the edition that worked for us. And if it didn't work for us, we house ruled it to the point where it did work. I don't understand. Outside of the whole, my company wants to make more money off of you, I don't understand why it does that. I think the only time I understood it, I still didn't like it. The only time I understood it was back in the 90s with White Wolf, the White Wolf gaming systems, World of Darkness. And the reason I understand that is because they tied the ongoing story of Werewolf, the Apocalypse, Vampire the Masquerade, Mage, and Wraith. They tied them all in together with this series of novels they were doing. So the stories were advancing, and there was a prophecy that it was all building forward to. So I understand why they ended World of Darkness series. I wasn't still happy with it, and I still play it, and I'm planning a new campaign revolving around the second edition stuff they came out with, the Werewolf in the 80s. So it's no big deal, but the fact that I can at least understand why they did it, because it tied in with the story. Of course, the story was there to sell books, sell novels, as well as the RPG system. So again, I guess it just comes down to they did it for money more than anything else. Why is the new editions? Just to make money. That's all. And these new editions cause people to have these edition wars, which my edition is better than yours. Your edition sucks. Oh, why do you even play that? And it's stupid. It's stupid. If you're involved in the edition wars, you're a moron. You are. There, I said it. You like your system, I like my system. Who the heck cares? It's not about changing your mind. It's not about changing my mind. All comes down to house rules. House ruling everything. That's what RPGs are about. We don't need other editions. Anyway, that was a little bit about me grognarding through the 80s, and a little bit how I feel about editions. And that's it. This was a very casual sort of a Midday Monologue Monday. Too much alliteration. All right, my friends. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. Thank you for checking us out on Facebook. Thank you for checking us out on Twitter. Thank you, of course. Thank you so much for subscribing to Two Gun Pixie right here on YouTube. I'm your buddy, Big Johnny G, and I am out of here.